Welcome to Forest Namesake. So glad to have you here today. This is the continuation of God and Our Stories series. And this story was submitted by my dad, Mike. It's called Memories on the Texas Coast. Fishing at the Texas Gulf Coast has been one of my favorite memories. When my dad had finished harvesting the maize, not corn, but a type of sorghum, then later on we stopped growing maize and planted corn instead. Anyway, when the fields had been plowed, it was time for a well-earned vacation. Now we have gone to the coast as long as I can remember. I have memories of sitting in my mother's lap in nothing but a diaper while my dad was driving the boat. Many of our relatives have joined us while we were there as well. Me and my dad would get our saltwater boat ready for the trip, while my mom got our small freezer ready. It had to be cleaned out, unplugged, and ready to load on the bed of our pickup truck. She also got together all of the food we would need for the 5-day trip. After getting the boat ready to go, me and my dad got the rods and reels and the tackle we would need. We had to bring our heavier rods for this trip. Saltwater fish are typically bigger than freshwater fish, at least the ones you can legally keep. Early the next morning, we loaded everything in the back of our old pickup truck, then hitched up the boat and set out for the 6-hour trip south to a little town on the Texas coast. Sometimes my uncle, who lived practically next door, joined us on our trip. Now he loved to go to the coast and got so excited that he would often show up at our house at midnight to 1 o'clock in the morning, banging on our windows to wake us all up. Needless to say, we weren't happy to get woken up like that. But what could you do but get everything loaded up and ready to go? My dad always made the motel, not hotel, arrangements, which were quite easy to make since we had a good relationship with the family who ran the motel. This motel is not much to look at, but it has what we need. It had 2 beds, though they were old and lumpy. It also had a kitchenette, which was necessary since we had cooked breakfast and dinner. Lunch was always eaten on the boat. We reserved just 1 room for all of us, but we were just a family of 3. If my uncle came along, he would sleep with my dad and I would sleep in the bed with my mother. Occasionally, a few others would join us for the trip, so we took a few extra cots for them to sleep on. Nowadays, hotel rooms have strict occupancy rules, but back in those days, we didn't have to worry about that. Sleeping was always fun. Since the beds were old, they often had a sinking spot in the middle, so the only way to sleep was to hang a leg over the side to keep yourself from sliding into the middle of the sinking bed. Also, my dad, his brother, and my mom's brother were very loud snorers. You can imagine the noise. It was almost loud enough to rattle pictures off the walls. On the trip, we enjoyed looking at the Texas countryside and the small towns we would pass through. Around lunchtime, we would always stop at a Dairy Queen and get some burgers for lunch. Oh, they were delicious. At least they were back then. Dairy Queens aren't what they used to be. An hour or 2 later, we finally pulled into our coastal fishing town. You could almost smell the salt air. We pull up to the motel, check in and get the keys. Then we began the process of unloading everything. Since we had the afternoon with nothing to do, we would head to the fishing store by the public boat dock and buy whatever fishing lures we needed. Across the dock was a bait shop with live or frozen shrimp. I can't remember if it had anything else in it, but it was always fun to see the shrimp swimming around in the saltwater tank. Then it was time for dinner and to get ready for bed early. The alarm went off at 5 a.m. After dragging ourselves out of bed, it was time for breakfast. When we went to the coast, my dad always cooked to give my mom a break since she always cooked at home. On some other mornings, he would make pancakes. On other mornings, he would cook scrambled eggs and add some cubes of Spam. Now, if you haven't had Spam, you are definitely missing out. Well, maybe not. It's kind of salty canned pork, but in the days around World War II, it was very popular. After breakfast, it was time to get ready for fishing, although it was still dark outside. Once you went outside, you would be besieged by mosquitoes. I forgot to mention that the motel was right next to a large grassy lowlands area, which is the perfect breeding ground for giant mosquitoes. These mosquitoes were huge and especially vicious. We took along a large ice chest loaded with ice and enough food and drinks to last a full day of fishing, the rods and fishing tackle and anything else we might need. Once the boat was hitched to our pickup truck, we all piled in and set off for the dock. After unloading the boat into the water, my dad would park the truck and we would set out. Now, most of the time the sun was not up yet, but you could see where you were going. Once we got to the fishing spot, we would usually drop the anchor, 2 anchors if it was too windy, as quietly as possible in the water. Then it was time for fishing. When I was little, me and my mother would stay in the boat while my dad and whoever was with us would wade fish in the shallows of the bays and flats surrounding the little town where we stayed. After I got tall enough, I would join my dad wade fishing. If it was in the winter time, yes, we would sometimes go fishing then too. You had to wear insulated waders. Waders basically look like a thick pair of extra wide pants with rubber boots attached to the legs. They had suspenders too. Anyway, even with the waders, the water was still cold. As we waded through the flats, we would catch speckled trout, reds, which are actually called channel bass and are not red at all, but a sort of gold color with a white belly, flounder, black drum, and sheep's head. No, they aren't actual sheep heads, but are named for their teeth that resemble a sheep's. Occasionally you might catch a hardhead, which is saltwater catfish. We didn't eat them. Or a stingray, but these were primarily caught when fishing with bait from the boat. If we had other company joining us, we would meet them at the dock later in the morning. Who really wants to get up before sunup just to go fishing? So they liked to sleep in, but we took them fishing anyway. It made for a crowded boat, but it was fun to watch aunts, uncles, and cousins enjoying themselves. On these occasions, we would usually go to the beach. This beach was one where you could only get there with a boat. The beach had so many shells of all kinds, lots of sand dollars and other interesting things. My dad liked to fish in the surf when we went to the beach. You could catch fish you normally wouldn't catch in the bays and flats. I've had lots of great memories fishing at the coast. I remember seeing my first tornado as it moved across the water and then across a small island. I remember the first time I wade fished alone. Kinda scary, but there's nothing quite like it either, as you catch a big fish and land it yourself. One of the worst experiences I had was when I was probably 7 or so. It was an afternoon when we were all fishing out of the boat with shrimp we got from a bait shop next to the boat dock. My dad caught a stingray and put it in the boat. He demonstrated what would happen if you stepped on it. The stingray will whip its tail around and try to stab you in the leg. That's why we drag our feet while wading so we don't step on one of these. Anyway, he decided to cut the tail off and throw the stingray overboard. Please don't do this if you catch one. It's no fun for the stingray to be thrown back into the salt water with no tail. It's quite painful. My dad put the tail toward the back of the boat on the floor. Well, you know how kids can forget about things like that, so what did I do? I forgot about the tail, walked toward the back of the boat and stepped on the tail. Stingray tails are quite slick, and my shoe slid down the tail toward the barb. The barb went into the side of my shoe sole and then curved up into my foot. Ouch! My dad saw what happened and told me to sit on the floor. He then grabbed his pliers. All farmers have a pair somewhere nearby. Grabbed the tail and pulled the stinger out of my foot. Thank God the tail didn't break off from my foot. The barbs contain a type of venom which was injected into my foot. He tried sucking the venom out with his mouth, but this is probably not a good idea. We then had to get me to a hospital fast, but that is not really possible miles from the dock. Eventually, we made it to the dock, and after loading everything back into the pickup, my dad dropped off the boat at the motel so the owner could keep an eye on it. Then we raced to a nearby hospital about an hour away. It was probably closer, but it seemed like forever. I don't remember much about the hospital, but the doctor cleaned the wound and wrapped my foot up. I was on crutches for about 2 weeks. Hobbling around on crutches is no fun. On another fishing trip, my cousin bought a very long stringer. Stringers are basically long nylon strings with a sharp metal point with a float attached. You can keep the fish you catch on a stringer and they swim around while you fish. Well, he was so proud of his long stringer and set out wade fishing one day. My mom and I were in the boat watching him fish, so I was pretty young then. He caught a red that was about 6 to 7 inches from stomach to back, a good-sized fish. Sometime later, we noticed him backing into shallow water and heading for the boat. When he got back to the boat, he was pretty shaken up. Apparently, a large shark had discovered his fish on the stringer and bit it in two. All that was left was the half with the head. The shark also bit the stringer in the process. Yikes, that was too close for comfort. The shark had to have jaws that were larger than 8 inches across to bite the fish like it did. One of the perks of fishing was lunch. We would buy a big block of cheese that was shaped like a can and wrapped in wax and sit on the boat's dash to heat up while we went out wade fishing. The sun would get the cheese nice and hot, making it become like a thick pancake. Cheese like this is so delicious. I can still almost taste it now. We would eat the cheese with some hamburger patties my dad cooked on the grill before the trip. There's nothing quite like enjoying a nice simple meal while on a boat on the coast. I will forever hold dear these fishing trips to the Texas coast. God was definitely watching over me and my family on those trips, but he also showed us the wonders of his creation that we got to enjoy. Hope you enjoyed these memories of my dad going fishing on the coast when he was a boy to a teenager. He loves to talk about it with us, and I'm so glad that he got to share it today, or rather I got to share it today, what he wrote for you all. And don't forget that you are more than welcome to share a story of your own. The criteria will be in the description box below. We would love to read some of the stories. And you don't have to worry about it sounding perfect. We'll do the editing and make sure it flows smoothly, and that's all that you need to worry about. So anyway, hope you all enjoyed, and please click like, subscribe, click the notification bell, and Lord willing, we will see you on the next video. Bye!